Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out, and I do it. If you have your own special selection you'd like to submit, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's special selection comes at us from Necrophage. A long while ago, I requested this post-metal song, then switched out at the last minute, and I asked you to change it to a different song of theirs. Well, I shall re-request it. The song is Primum Movens by Lightbearer. Alright, so let's get into this. See what Lightbearer has in store for us today. A 3/4 lullaby, it seems. I really like the dryness of the drum set here. The snare just has the crack, not really a reverb on it. And those little runs on the cymbal just kind of have the sound of the wood against the metal, not really any of the shimmer. For all I know, that's not even a cymbal roll. Could just be something else. Could be like a roll on the side of the snare, on the rim. I really like it though. And that panning kind of gives me a warmth, like being surrounded, lulling me into this lullaby. Not what I expected from post-metal bands. Interesting, we have the bass kick accenting beat 1, we have a cymbal hit accenting beat 2, and a snare on the offbeat of 2. Interesting section. So far we've been very specifically in 3/4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Everything emphasizes it. That solo guitar section was emphasizing 1 and the and of 2, which is breaking it up into 2 groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's how I was feeling it, in 2 groups of 3 rather than 3 groups of 2, which implies a 6/8 rather than a 3/4, even though it is the same tempo. Very interesting. See, and here we are again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Really emphasizing those 2 groups. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Every time the drums come in, whoa. Every time the drums come in though, we emphasize a 3. Feels so far away. It's so distant. Almost like I can't turn up the volume enough to actually hear what's going on. like how some of the ideas from the previous section are still present in here despite the atmosphere change. Interesting harsh harmony there. Bass is really leading this element here. Really feeling this falling idea. So we've moved to 4/4, 4-bar phrases. Yeah, interesting too. We're emphasizing 1, the end of 5, and 7. If we're looking at a 2-bar phrase. And we have this bouncing around between the guitars. Yeah, a duality that we haven't seen prior. Oh, we moved back to the 3. I didn't pick that up yet. Ooh, a little more uplifting here. It's very, oh, we're going back from the descending idea. Bringing a lot of tension with the strings and piano. It's not over yet. Oh no, we still have a couple minutes. Very eerie and contemplative. Drastic dynamic on the volume side as well. Interesting, there's also a lack of resolution here. Like, it's an ending to the song, but it's not an ending thematically. There's this really cool hum going on that's really selling the atmosphere here. Oh, that goes into the next song, doesn't it? Alright. So, there's a lot going on here, but there's also very little going on, as is kind of typical of post-rock or post-metal, where individually when you look at single sections, they're incredibly dense, they're incredibly layered, there's lots of ideas happening at one time. Occasionally there may be more ideas added over time to increase the layering on it, but overall, the song as a whole doesn't really do a lot. There's primarily three ideas going on in here, four maybe. And two of them are basically the same idea, but shifting from light to heavy. There's a lot of the same musical ideas being utilized in both of those. It really is more of an atmospheric and textural change for that section. And for a 14-minute song to only move through four different sections, maybe I might be able to say five different sections. That's really a long time to be staying in each individual one, but that's what post music tends to do. So, where do we start though? Start at the beginning? Does that sound fair? Let's start at the beginning. We have the most odd intro I've heard, especially being set up, hey, this was the post-metal song or post-metal band that I asked you to check out a while ago. Here's another song from them. Okay, let's dive into this. And 3 minutes of a lullaby, beautiful music. So we have some elements there that I really enjoyed was the dry production, which kind of bled into the rest of it. It got a bit wetter when we introduced all the fuzz that comes in on the guitars and the crackle and the compression on the vocals with their harsh vocals. But the drum really stays dry like it does at the beginning. It doesn't have a lot of reverberance on it or extra shimmer. It really has mostly just the raw attack of the stick hitting the instrument. And this is something that we saw throughout the entire opening section. There really isn't a lot of elements there that add reverb or width aside from the guitar panning, right? That's definitely going to be a bit of a productive element. Production element. I tried to turn that into some sort of adverb or some sort of adjective. Productive does not mean that it deals with production. It means that it makes things. Being productive is not the same as being part of the production. I mean, I don't know. I have to look into that. It's close. Maybe I'm making words up as usual, though. So, we have this very dry guitar or drum sound. We have a dry guitar sound aside from the panning. And we have these beautiful melody lines being put on top of this sort of soothing back and forth foundational work in the guitar. And we have an extended moment of this to really build on these ideas and get acquainted with them because they're mostly going to show up again in the future. Primarily that lead line and the guitar foundational work that bounces back and forth between left and right pan, both of those show up again in the future. So those are two things definitely to look out for. But I also love this false sense of beauty or peace or calm or warmth, comfort, whatever element you want to get from this. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the opposite of what the post-metal section brings in. It is heavy, it is overbearing, it is aggressive, it is confrontational, it is everything the opening is not. I would say no matter how you feel and interpret the opening 3-minute lullaby, it's going to be in stark opposition of what the rest of the song makes you feel or transports you to. And it's obviously it has to be done intentionally. I'm really excited to dive into the lyrics later and see what's going on here because there is a flow to it, but they're also very no. I mean, atmospherically they're very divorced from each other. But the transition into the heavy part happens fairly naturally, if I remember correctly, and it already utilizes some of the elements from the previous section, primarily that guitar that bounces back and forth. I believe that remains there, and the heaviness is put on top of that. That is still a clean guitar on the bottom of the first 2 or 3 minutes that we're in this heavy section. So yeah, coming at it from that angle, it's not that they're two opposite ideas. They're two sides of the same coin kind of idea, right? We have a lot of similar elements between them. We have a very similar production style. It's just that one side views these musical phrases through the lens of peace and beauty, and the other sees it through the lens of weight and oppression and harshness. Interesting. And we see this duality pop up again in the evolution of this section when we change from just sort of this atmospheric work to the guitar riff that jumps between a lower note and a higher note. I mentioned that we had shifted from a static element to showing a duality in range for the first time since the clean section in the beginning. The guitars are playing higher notes, and it's not that they're running up into them with do 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 do. They're not building into it. It is jumping from this low note to the high one. It is showing the space and distance between them. So we have the duality there as well. And what was the next section? There was another section before we hit the end. The section prior to the end, the most chaotic section. And I can't remember. Maybe this was it. I should have wrote it down. I remember another piece of duality idea, and I can't quite remember what it was. But anyways, we get to the end, and it is the most chaotic. I think the screaming is because it's constant, right? I don't really remember too many breaks when the harshes were in. It was just kind of a constant assault of these harsh vocals, but it felt like they're building up right before the silence, which was like at minute 11:45 or something like that. Right before then, I feel like the lyrics, the vocals were actually overlapping each other. Like the end of one sentence was actually still going when the beginning of the next one came up. So instead of this constant, what seemed to me of just a constant assault of vocals, is more of either opposing vocals going back and forth, or the idea of like overlapping thoughts where you can't even finish your first thought before your second one kicks in. That kind of idea of rapid fire informative elements coming through. So yeah, the intensity ramps up there. We have more layers, I think, at this point. Oh yeah, because we bring in the strings and the piano. So yeah, we definitely have a lot more elements there. It's wide, it is dense. This is also the most chaotic as far as the mixing goes, because whereas prior to this, everything sort of had its space. It was definitely going for that wall of sound approach with just all these instruments coming together and making this atmosphere. But when we include these two other instruments, there's no room for them, and the mix is not altered to accommodate them. They are literally overbearing as they come in. They take up space that isn't available for them. And not to mention that we also have the overlapping vocals. We have more vocals than usual. So, all this is creating this element of a space sparsity. There is no more space to put more instruments, and yet they've included more. It becomes overly full, overly dense, and balance of the balance in the mix, the balance in the EQ, in spacing, compositionally, just everything is thrown out of whack when you bring in these two extra instruments. And that's what creates this overly chaotic, overly dense, overly full feeling before we go into that silence, which acts again as duality. We go from filling the sound sphere so much that it actually overlaps I would say we filled it up so much that, or we've tried to cram so much into it that it's starting to, poke through at the seams. And then we get the exact opposite of that, which is 30 seconds of near silence to the point that I thought the song was over. I actually had to check the time. I say near silence because I don't remember what the visualization looked like on the audio, but it sounded silent to me. But I kind of remember this low hum bringing us into that outro. And I don't remember where that started. So we might have actually hit pure silence, which would be 105 to 0 as far as how much space is being utilized in the sound sphere. Drastic amount of contrast. And then the final part of the song, the piano solo with the I can't actually remember the instrumentation. I remember there was a piano. There might have been an acoustic guitar, and then there was that low hum that sort of wrapped around it. And a drastic change, massive juxtaposition to everything prior because we have a brand new key signature, a brand new vibe, a brand new atmosphere, and a what I kind of alluded to as being a cliffhanger. Like I said, coming up, I knew we were finishing up the song, right? And this part of the track wasn't really going anywhere. And in a lot of ways, it felt like the opening, where it wasn't really building into anything. It wasn't really going to a destination. It was sort of just existing. And I figured with, I think we only had like a minute and a half to go once this kicked in. I was like, okay, this is just going to be the end of the song. There's nothing coming after this. And, technically I'm wrong, right? It sounds like it goes into the next track. But in the context of this song in isolation, I kind of figured that this is it. This is the end of the song, but it doesn't sound like the end. And yes, hindsight, I know it goes into the next track now, but the idea of it being the end but not feeling final is built into that section. I don't know what comes after it. I don't know what appears in the next song. Maybe nothing. Maybe it has that volume ramp up and then that's it. The next song doesn't continue the idea. I don't know. That's a possibility. But I like this idea of the cliffhanger in it. It alludes to something more, and maybe that is the next track. Maybe it's continued on another album, but to create the idea, the feeling of something being over, right? And that doesn't just come from the fact that I knew we had 90 seconds to go. There is an end to something in this. We went from, this sound feeling like it's going to burst to a solo piano, I think. Maybe a guitar, I don't remember, like I said. But very sparse. And it's solemn and it's melancholic. Not necessarily sad, but definitely thinking back on things or pondering. It is being in one's own mind, right? It almost feels like it could be filled with regret or uh, something building, something negative building. Um, but we have this ending, this finality to the song structurally. Okay, I think that's one way I'm going to put it, where we have this really nice bell curve where we start out quiet, we get big. Well, actually, not a bell curve, more of just a standard storytelling idea. You start out small, you get bigger, maybe a couple dips, you reach your highest point, that's your climax, your denouement, you finish out the song, or finish out the story, and you end on a low point again. The story has been told, you've gone through this roller coaster of events and tension, and now you've resolved all that, and the story's over, and the characters have learned their lesson or whatever. The world has been saved. Um, so we have that, but we don't have the resolution in our final moment. We felt the denouement, we felt the release of the tension. We hit our highest climax and we resolved that tension, but we didn't get the resolution, the chordal resolution to dictate that the thing had ended. So based on the emotions and the intensity of the song, we feel that it's over, that this is the end. But the chord progression and the atmosphere of this final section is telling us that it's not over. There's still unresolved elements. And like I said, to me, there's this pensiveness, maybe this regret, maybe this something. But whatever caused this big explosive climax did not make everybody happy. And there's some regret or contempt or something. There's some angry pondering going on here at the end. And you can feel it in the piano. It is not a happy ending. It's a sad ending for sure, but there's also a lack of that resolution to make it feel like it's final. It's an ending to the song, not to the story, as I had said earlier. So yeah, really dig that. And that just, like I said, ties in with everything. There's this duality, and come to think of it, I just mentioned that whatever happened, somebody's not happy with this outcome, which would imply opposing forces, which would imply duality. Not necessarily imply duality, but I tend to think, art tends to focus on opposing ideologies. Good versus bad is just so common. We typically don't see a third party in storytelling. Just naturally, without really thinking about it, when I hear like conflict, like here, I'm thinking of two parties, whether it's two people specifically, or two groups of people, or two sides of an argument, or whatever. It's always to me as duality. It's two sides, not usually three. Um, so I could be completely wrong in my reading of that. That is definitely a crutch that I kind of lean on when I think about music. As I think about it in twos as far as stuff like that goes. Now, something else I want to talk about aside from the duality is going to be the atmosphere. And I already kind of touched on it, but I think it's important to dive into the variety of atmospheres that we are showcased here, and an appreciation for Lightbearer of being able to achieve all of these. We have the super lull and safe and comforting opening 3 minutes. We have the next section which comes in. It's heavy, it's a bit oppressive, but it's not overbearing, right? And there's definitely some brighter elements. Well, no, I don't think we bring the brighter elements in until later. But it isn't really uh, it's not really weighty yet, right? We have the feeling of it. We have the feeling of the weight. We have the electric guitars coming in. We have the heavier drums. We have the growls. Like, it's definitely a heavier metal kind of sound, but it really doesn't have that weight yet. It isn't until the next section when they introduce that falling pattern, right? The four chords that fall, rather than looping around in circles or hitting a nice resolution following a standard chord progression to resolve the tension in the fourth bar that kind of points back to home, where we can begin the chord again, or resolves onto home, which also kind of points towards probably the three, so we can start the chord again. Allowing for a loop, but having these moments of resolution. No, this just descends, and we hear four descents, and then we go back up, and it's a loop, and we just hear this descent. There's nothing in here, though, that implies anything finite. It is this constant falling idea. This is where the weight starts to come in, because we begin to hear clashing elements here in the notes that they chose for this falling chord progression. This is where we start to hear more of the rapid fire vocals. Before this, it was like a vocal line, then a vocal line, and then a vocal line, and there's a little space between them. And here's like vocal, 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 just this constant assault of hearing the vocals, and it really turns them into more of a texture. Within the mix, it's more difficult to hear them individually than it was before, because whereas before it was punctuating specific moments of time, here it is a constant sound, no different than the fuzz and the guitar that we're hearing. It really does sort of blend in. And then we add in some of those lullaby sounds, right? We haven't really heard them before, the piano and the strings, but they're definitely something I would associate with the opening, not this metal section. And this is where things really begin to clash because we have notes that don't have room to fit in. And before I was talking about that spatially, having rests in some instruments to place these other instruments in, or having space in the sound sphere production wise to place them where they're not covering up other instruments. But also musically, there is nowhere to put them. They end up clashing and introducing very loud, large sections of instability through dissonance. I mentioned that there's a lot of weight to these sections, but there's really not a lot of noise yet. Everything is still rather, I don't want to say harmonious. There's definitely an element of clashing here, but it's not, they don't have a lot of elements of dissonance, especially like we've heard this week with mathcore. I have a pretty good ear for dissonant noises now. This is not that. There's still a lot of palatability to this weight, to this heaviness, to the metal sound. The notes that they're choosing underneath these metal tones and timbres and atmospheres are consonant for the most part. There's very few cases where the notes are rubbing each other wrong and creating that really tense sound, that shrill um, idea that we call dissonance. And this is, these other instruments come in. This is where that really shows up, though. So we've had lullaby, palatability, comfort, that kind of atmosphere. We've had heavy, but not tense, not dissonant, just weight. We've had extra weight where we can actually feel the oppression of the sound, and then we include dissonance on top of that, and it's this gradual change from something of comfort to something of distress. And then that immediately paves the way for that emptiness, which is its own atmosphere, however people want to feel about that. And then that final moment, which to me feels contemplative, melancholic. Uh, and it is its own little idea there as well. And not only do they find a way to tell this story in the atmosphere, but one that feels congruent throughout. I don't know if that's the right word. Feels cohesive throughout. It doesn't feel like any section has just been shoehorned. It feels like a natural progression from beginning to end, and they do them all exceptionally well. I think I said this week actually, but it always blows my mind to hear a band who can do so many things well. Writing chaotic or dissonant or metal songs is very different from writing beautiful melodic songs. They're two very different skills. One is based on texture and feeling, and the other one's based mostly around theoretical ideas. You don't have to know the theory, but writing something harmonious requires understanding note relationships to each other and how chords are built. Even if you don't know all the chords, you still need to understand how these notes relate to each other and the feelings that they can bring out. Whereas with noise, you really just got to figure out which two notes don't sound great together or how to crank up the volume. It's a very different skill set. I don't mean that to diminish noisy or metal style of writing. I can't do it. I've tried many times. I'm still learning. I'm getting better at it. But it is a vastly different skill set than writing something that's very harmonious. Um, and part of my dumbing down what you need to do to make something heavier is part of my lack of understanding of it. I don't know the intricacies to making good noisy music, right? So like I said, I don't want to, you just turn the volume up and play stuff that doesn't fit and now you got metal. No. That's obviously me coming at it not understanding it. I'm not trying to just diminish this style of music at all. But to see a band so effectively and masterfully move between all of this, not just on the extremes, but through nuance as well, is mind blowing. It always blows my mind to see a band or composers or anybody, just have such a grasp on so many opposing facets of music creation. It's just really cool. So I think that's the two major things I wanted to talk about regarding them is duality and atmosphere and the story that's told within those two. And the next thing is going to be the lyrics, and this is where everything starts to come together. So the song is called Primum Movens. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. It is Latin. It translates to the prime mover. It is the idea of whatever entity began the began the life as we know it, right? So whether that's the Big Bang theory, that would be the prime mover in science, or some sort of god, or the creation myth, and any sort of religious or mythological elements, those would be the prime movers of modern life. What led to life as we know it. And lyrically, this is a discussion, a topic, conversation between Lucifer and the authority. Now, given the prime mover and Lucifer, I will let you decide who the authority is. I kind of know who I'm putting in that role, but the choice of them to specifically not use the word God and to use the authority is an interesting idea, and it makes me think that they might actually have something a little more in mind than a typical story based on the Christian belief. However, this seems to be about the fall of Lucifer. We have an opening stanza that proclaims love and adoration and loyalty to God. Now, this time, God is presented as a word, and it is capitalized. So it leads me to think of the Christian God here. But, professes love and loyalty towards this God. And then there is an exchange between the authority and Lucifer, and the authority is unhappy, calls him a proud fool, a dissenter, and finally condemns Lucifer. Now, interestingly, this might have been the point in the song when we had the lows and the highs, which would be really cool. I'm not entirely sure, but having the ideology of one of them, not necessarily, I don't know necessarily who would represent what, but opposing sides, and the guitar, bouncing between them while the vocalist is also bouncing between them. Because they are having an exchange. It goes, proud fool, my Pharisee, dissenter, this heresy, I sovereign, my majesty, condemn you. And it's this back and forth between them. I got to go back and listen to that section to see if that is the one where the guitars are bouncing back and forth, but also to see if that is the one, or see if the vocals are doing like a back and forth, or if they're doing anything different as well. I'm talking too fast. To see if the vocalist is doing anything different for the two of them. Because personally, that's what I would do. But as far as I remember, there's only one vocal style through this whole song, so I'm really interested about that. Then Lucifer has a stanza, the authority has a stanza. There is a break, which I believe leads us into the outro. Oh, no, not the outro. There's no vocals on the outro. Anyways, the final stanza is with Lucifer, who seems to be upset about things and is declaring war against the authority. And as the Christian Bible goes, this war is what led to Lucifer being condemned to hell and all that stuff. So that's it's a bit, at least to me, it's a bit on the nose. I like some of the language that's being utilized here, but it embodies a lot of these ideas of duality, as far as peace, rising conflict, the climax, which would probably be the moment when Lucifer is defeated, the fall, and then the final moment of being upset and pensful and thoughtful. And this would probably be when Lucifer decides how he's going to get his revenge, which leads to him creating sin or whatever. I don't know. It's a pretty interesting song. I really like how everything lines up, and they seem to have put a lot of thought and attention towards the small details to tell the story, not just in the lyrics, but in the music as well. Every bit of this, I could feel an idea of what was going on, and when paired together, I bet they work very well. And I only say that because I did not have the lyrics in front of me, so I don't know what words are paired with what situations. Um, There also seem to be a lot more lyrics than here, so I wonder how often or how much of this is repeated. Because there's a whole 5 stanzas here, and there's probably a good 7 or 8 minutes of music, or of vocal sections in this song. So I am curious if any of this is repeated or looped. I don't know. Those are my thoughts, though. That's where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of Lightbearer, Primum Movens. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Let me know if you agree with me. Let me know if you have your own perspective or own take on what was going on here. I'm interested. I think I'm pretty spot on. I don't think they hid the intent of their song, but I'm always open to other perspectives, and maybe you got a different angle out of it that's, might be close to mine, might be very different from mine. I'm always open to hear how other people experience music. I am no authority. I am simply a dude who listens to music and tells you guys about my personal experience with a first listen. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel or me. You can check out what I've been listening to, the music I've been creating. You can help support the channel through Patreon. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join the Discord community. You can pick up some merch. You can do a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up for today. We got one more day ahead of us, one more math chord track, and then a creator request. That's what's coming up tomorrow, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.